Hello there! Welcome to the channel. First of all, if you like this video and you like any others that I've been doing, please like, share and subscribe. This is my second channel. I have another one called Nerd.World. There's a link in the description below and possibly above. Please check it out. There's a lot more varied content on that channel. It's a little bit more general rather than this channel, which is a bit more focused on movies. If you like this, please check out that channel. And with that, let's get into this video. Here we're going to be discussing the cult favourite Tremors, the 1990 film starring Kevin Bacon that helped launch his career into megastardom in the 90s. And this is some things you may not know about that movie franchise. Here we go. Number 1. The story. The story of Tremors is basically about a small town in the isolated desert being stalked by large subterranean invertebrates that are killing everything that moves on the surface. You're mainly following the story of the two main protagonists of the show, which are Earl Bassett, played by Fred Ward, and Val McKee, played by a young Kevin Bacon. These two play local odd job men and handymen, basically working cash in hand day to day, paycheck to paycheck, dreaming of a better life. And while they're in the midst of making this life-changing decision to leave perfection and move to Bixby up down the road where they believe that more opportunity will be available to them, things start going a little wrong. As they try to leave town, they find an old man dead up a tower, and then it's one thing after another. They find the road is blocked. They find dead workmen. They find various things that begin to impede their ability to leave the town, and begin to suspect that something is quite wrong. Running into a local seismologist, they discover that there's something making unusual vibrations in the local area. Over time, everyone begins to realize that there is something unknown attacking people and animals in the local area. The town then have to band together to try and defeat this menace that gets named Graboids by the local shop owner before he's killed by one. The film is a survival story about them attempting to evade these creatures, save each other, kill them and not be eaten themselves in the process. They learn that the creatures hunt by vibration. They learn that it can't pass through solid rock, which is why it's stuck in the valley. They also learn that if they stand up on high rises, the creatures can't get to them, but they can sense their vibrations as they move on the rock, so they're stuck there and they can't get off. Which leads to some interesting scenes of them pole vaulting from rock to rock in order to get back to a vehicle to get out of the area. These large life forms, though, will track you for miles. Based on your vibrations, the more vibrations you make, the more they'll come after you, as they learn to their detriment throughout the course of the movie. Eventually being besieged in a town, everyone ends up on their roofs trying to figure out a way to get away from these creatures or to defeat them. Other townsfolk who are involved in this notably are Bert and Heather Gummer, two local survivalists who shun society for the most part and are a little bit paranoid, just a little bit, about thinking there might be the odd government conspiracy going on here. They of course do figure out eventually how to defeat and outwit the creatures, with the final creature being led off a cliff by them using themselves as live bait and eventually chucking a dynamite stick behind it that causes an explosion that basically scares the creature into doing a charge, and it bolts out the side of the cliff, leading to its own death, killing the final creature. This heroic feat was accomplished by Val, played by Kevin Bacon, which now leads us into number 2, the cast and director. As stated, the film stars predominantly Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward as Val McKee and Earl Bassett respectively, but the film also stars Finn Carter as Rhonda LeBeck, Michael Gross as Bert Gummer, who becomes something of a fan favourite, Reba McEntire, quite interesting, and Bobby Jacoby as Melvin Plug, the annoying, obnoxious little kid in the film where everyone wants to die and just really hopes he gets eaten by one of the creatures. At least I hoped he got eaten by one of the creatures, and he turns up in the sequels and he still wanted to get eaten by the creatures. He also would turn up later in the Tremors TV series, playing the same character. Of course, Kevin Bacon needs no introduction. He's a very famous actor now, but back then he wasn't quite as well known. I think before this he was best known for Footloose and maybe Friday the 13th, for having what is a really awesome death in that film, where he is stabbed through the back of the neck from under a bed and slowly an arrow drives its way through his throat. It's gruesome and also awesome. He's also turned up more recently in various other films like R.I.P.D. and more awesomely X-Men First Class, playing a really awesome villain who I think was one of the highlights of that film, aside from Michael Fassbender, who's, to be honest, a highlight of any film that he's in. He's like Patrick Stewart. It just instantly elevates a film just with him being in it. Fred Ward is rumoured to actually be in the Tremors pilot TV series that was cancelled. There was a pilot filmed in 2017. He's rumoured to be in it, but it's not confirmed, as it's never actually been released. Other than that, he was in a series called Invasion Earth that I only learned about recently. Sounded kind of familiar, so I looked it up. It has this really weird opening trailer. Other than that, I don't really know much about it. Other than that, he's not really been in much I recognise. He wasn't in any of the subsequent sequels other than throwaway token references to him. Finn Carter, the love interest and scientist in the movie, has a more interesting career after Tremors. She bounced around a little bit. She was in CSI, she was in Judging Amy, she was in Murder, She Wrote, although that was before being in Tremors. She seems to have stopped acting around 2005 for reasons that I couldn't find, but in 2019, which may indicate some of the reasons why she was somewhat unemployable in Hollywood, is she was arrested for stealing a car and using credit cards which were not in her name without permission. So basically stolen credit cards. Not exactly an illustrious Hollywood career anymore. Shame, really. Michael Gross, again, he bounces around a little bit. He was in Psych, he was in CSI, but I think he's most famous for doing pretty much every single Tremors sequel on this earth ever created, with possibly the only exception being the 2017 reboot / sequel, which, if I understand it correctly, that film or TV pilot actually ignores all the canon, as some films in recent years, such as the new Halloween 2, tend to do, and to ignore all the sequels that came after the point in the franchise where they're most happy. And it seems to be a direct follow-on to the first Tremors 1990, not including any of the sequels or spin-offs that have come before it. Robert Jane, who played the obnoxious little schoolboy, does again turn up in a few different things. Most notably, again, he turns up in Tremors 3. He also turns up in the Tremors TV series as something of a villain. That's how irritating this guy actually was in the show. He was so annoying to the fans. You so wanted him to die. You wanted him to die more than the Graboid. You were rooting for the Graboid to kill this guy. He's such a sleazy little SOB that you want him to die. He actually is responsible for murder in the TV show. He's a little git. And he still doesn't get his comeuppance. He somehow survives every time. I always hoped that they were going to do something to kill him off in the show, but they didn't. Other than that, he's been in the Mythica series. He was in Sliders, Walker, Texas Ranger, Baywatch. Don't remember him in that, but apparently he was. Reba McEntire, obviously more famous as a country singer. I quite like her work myself. I'm a bit of a country fan. She's been in a variety of different shows. Murder, She Wrote, which, by the way, I don't know if anyone else has ever noticed this. You ever look into anyone's IMDb, anyone's filmography, any major star from the 90s, they all, at some point, seem to have been on that show. It's like a revolving door of everyone you may have seen in every show ever from the 1990s has popped up in Murder, She Wrote. Or is that just me that notices it? I noticed that like the entire cast of Star Trek Voyager were in odd episodes. A few of them are in episodes together. I think Kate Mulgrew and possibly Robert Beltram are actually in the same episode of Murder, She Wrote, although I might not be right about that. I'd have to research it. But I seem to remember seeing them in an episode turn up together. As a little token bit of Star Trek trivia interest, actually, Bibi Besh, who played Dr. Carol Marcus in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, arguably, maybe not arguably actually, the best Star Trek movie ever made, appears in this as the Doctor's wife who gets unceremoniously eaten by one of the graboids near the beginning of the movie. Just a nice little bit of trivia there. But also, more importantly, in an uncredited capacity, and a little bit more awesomely, a man who is something of a FX legend in Hollywood. Tom Woodruff Jr. does the creature effects for the graboid in this film, but the man is legend. He's done an Alien, he's done a Predator, Graboid, he did Jumanji, he did Alien Nation. The man turns up everywhere. Tom Woodruff Jr. Just great. I think it's from, he did the creature, I don't know if he did Alien, but I know he did Aliens, did Alien 3, did Alien Resurrection, he did the Pred Alien. The guy just turns up everywhere. And if it's epic, he's probably done it or it's something to do with it. And he did the graboids for this film, which something I didn't know before I did my research for this. And I thought I knew the Tremors franchise pretty damn well. Shows you can be as much of a nerd as you like, but you always have something new to learn. And as for the director, Ron Underwood, in recent years he's done a number of different TV shows that I'm personally a huge fan of, such as Hawaii Five-0 and the rebooted Magnum P.I., as well as MacGyver and other such shows in recent years that are all of really top-notch quality, which interestingly means he's also done Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is obviously part of the greater MCU, if you want to really count it in. I don't know if some people do or don't. I personally do count the television universe as part of the MCU. There's too many nods and references, but technically speaking, Hawaii Five-0, Magnum P.I., those are related, as are they then interconnected technically into the NCIS universe, as they're all part of they exist within the same television universe, so it's quite a cool, big, expansive story that's going on there, and I love things that have lots of story, lots of lore. Love it. Anything that's got just more than just your run-of-the-mill A to B. You got a hero, you got a heroine, he's going to save her, he's got a villain, he's going to defeat them after a little fall, he's going to recover, he's going to defeat them and ride off into the sunset with the damsel in distress that he's now saved, and he's going to raise her kid as his own, or whatever stupid, typical A to B bullshit that you hear from Hollywood all the time. They just puke films like that out all the time. I like things that have some kind of context, that have some thought, some heart behind them, not just the same repetitive story puked up over and over again. Now on to number 3, the musical score. Most of the music for Tremors was composed by composer Ernest Traust, but the producers apparently didn't like his score. They found it a bit soppy and soft and whatever, so they dropped most of it and brought in a guy called Robert Folk, whose work would go uncredited on the movie, and Ernst Traust would get credited as the film's composer, although Traust, most of his work wasn't even in the film, but it would later be released in 2000 on CD as the sort of lost music of Tremors. Aside from Tremors, Traust isn't a name I recognise as a composer from anything particularly, and checking out his filmography, he mostly seems to have done B-movies like The Runaway from back in 2000, just random various low-budget films. However, Folk does do a series of films I recognise, like he's involved in a Never-Ending Story franchise, Ace Ventura. He's involved as a composer of Maximum Risk, a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie from many years ago. He's done quite a decent number of films that are up there on my nerd list of things I actually really enjoy watching, and they're pretty decent films. Finally, number 5. Release and budget and reception. Upon the film's release in 1990, it had taken about 50 days to film, a few bit of time to edit it. It started in 1989. It was done pretty quick, all things considered by Hollywood standards. It was filmed on an $11 million budget, and in its opening weekend made over $3 million, opening at number 5 in the box office in North America. Ultimately, the film would take over $16.5 million in the US, and would obviously take a considerable more globally. It got an 88% Rotten Tomatoes score, where it sits quite comfortably even now. With critics being mixed on it, but generally speaking they seem to like it. For a low-budget movie, or comparatively low-budget movie, because, you know, compensating for inflation between 1990 US dollars and 2020 US dollars, that's like more. It's more. It's a lot more. Yeah, the film did well, generally speaking. It certainly did well enough anyway to spawn off multiple sequels and spin-offs that are still being made even now, starting with Tremors 2 Aftershocks, which basically picks up where the first film left off, and Burt Gummer is hired to go to Mexico to deal with a graboid infestation that the Mexicans are having trouble with. It's shut down their oil plants. It's costing them a great deal of money. He goes down there along with Earl Bassett in his final appearance in the series. This film also introduces the Shriekers, the mutated form of the graboid. Basically, the graboids, generally speaking, a big bug. I've actually heard it on a video on the life cycle of the graboid, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but basically they mutate into these little ugly little fuckers that run around the ground and they have thermal heat vision and eat you. They're nasty, and the more they eat, the more they reproduce. Eventually they blow them all up. Then you get Tremors 3, Back to Perfection. Actually another good film. This one introduces the Ass Blaster, the shedded form of the Shrieker, which is able to fly. It's the egg layer that ultimately creates the graboids, or more accurately births little shooters, which are the little baby graboids, which are almost cute if they weren't really gross and that little creepy little beak on them. But yeah, they're not cute at all. Anyway, those little fuckers jump out of the ground and literally like take you down. And later, as they get bigger, they turn into the graboid, and the life cycle just continues. Now, then you get the fourth film, where the Legend Begins. It's a prequel, another staple of any series. This film actually stars the late Billy Drago. Rest in peace. That dude was awesome. He was another great character actor who turned up in just everything and made an amazing villain. And in this film, he actually played a bit of an anti-hero. A gunslinger for hire who sacrifices himself in the film, saving the others, trying to teach the ancestor of Gummer how to use a gun and really be a man and take charge of a situation and not be afraid all the time and be such a ponce, which he pretty much is at the beginning of the movie. Then you get Tremors 5, Bloodlines, that introduces the son of Burt Gummer and introduces the idea that the graboids actually can live elsewhere. There's other subspecies of them. Then you get number 6, A Cold Day in Hell, where you reach ice graboids and a lot of quite attractive scientists living there with them, all getting eaten. And there's number 7 that's coming this year, 2020, called Island Fury. Don't know much about that. It's probably graboids on an island, is what I'm guessing from the title. How they got there, not too sure. And then, of course, there was the 2003 TV series, Tremors the Series, quite simplistically named, which had an albino eunuch graboid that would never mutate into the Shrieker form and was now on the endangered species list, and it's all about the townspeople having to learn to live with this creature as well as various other mutant creatures which are a result of a government project gone wrong called Mixmaster that gets out into the environment and mutates every fucking thing in the environment into some kind of man-eating monster. It's ridiculous, but it's got Christopher Lloyd in it, so I forgive it for everything that it does that's just batshit crazy, and I love it. I recently rewatched it. It's awesome. You should check it out. Okay, right. That brings me to my nerd score. Only the second time I've done this, as this is only the second time on the channel, so yeah, it would only be the second time I've done it. I love these films. I love this franchise. I don't care how bad. I know it's a series of sequels of diminishing returns, but I don't care. They're all awesome. Even the TV series was awesome. If they did an animated show, I'd watch it. The show is awesome, but it does decrease somewhat in quality with all the sequels. They're funny. They're very tongue-in-cheek. They're ridiculous, which is what these films are meant to be. They're not meant to be realistic. This isn't meant to be a sci-fi horror like Alien or Predator or any other one you need to feel like you want to mention. It is what it is, and taken as it is, it's amazing. So I'm going to give it a pretty high score. I'm going to give it a 5 nerd score, which is just awesome. I love this film. Okay. Alright, this video's gone on long enough, I think. It's nearly 20 minutes long. Thanks for watching. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, you're awesome. I love you. Not many people make it to this far. Good on you. Please like, share and subscribe, and also check out my other channel, Nerd.World. As I've said, this is a bit more of a general channel. This channel is dedicated to movies. That channel I'm a bit more broad. To be honest, it's mostly Star Trek because I'm a huge Trekkie. So it's mostly Star Trek, but there's a lot of Stargate on there, a lot of Andromeda. Go check it out if you're interested. There's a link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.